Imagine losing everything you ever loved, and then discovering that the life you destroyed has been moving on without you. Caleb Vance, a billionaire who had it all, lost not just his marriage, but his ability to love, his very connection to the world, because of one mistake. 7 years of guilt, shame, and silence, until one stormy night, a boardroom, and a truth so shocking it will break your heart. His children, his own children, had been living a life he wasn't part of. And now, standing in front of the woman he betrayed, Caleb realizes that redemption might be his only chance to survive his own regret. But will she ever trust him again? And can a father lost for years reclaim the love of his family before it's too late? Hi, beautiful souls. I'm your storyteller, James, and tonight we're diving into a story of love, betrayal, and redemption that will make your heart ache and soar all at once. If you want to feel every tear, every heartbreak, and every moment of hope with Caleb and Bella, subscribe to my channel and support this journey. It's not just my story, it's ours. Without you, these tales cannot be told. Caleb Vance had everything the world envied and nothing his soul desired. From the outside, his life was a sculpture of success. Glass towers bearing his name, headlines celebrating his genius, and bank accounts that overflowed with numbers he no longer cared to read. But at night, when the city lights blurred against his penthouse windows, he faced his true empire, a kingdom built on silence. The hum of machines, the soft glow of monitors, and the echo of his own breathing. That was what greeted him when everyone else went home. His empire worked without him now, but he couldn't escape himself. The mirror in his office reflected a man in his late 30s, with a jaw carved by discipline, eyes dulled by exhaustion, and an expression that had forgotten joy. 7 years ago, Caleb Vance had been alive, wild, laughing, reckless in love. Now he was just surviving time. He poured a drink he wouldn't taste and leaned on the cold marble counter. Whiskey burned his throat, but nothing burned quite like memory. A nurse's laugh, light, careless, forbidden, echoed in his mind. It was the sound that destroyed his marriage, and ever since the man who once conquered industries couldn't conquer his own heart. He tried to move on, tried to date again, to feel something, but his body betrayed him, refusing what his guilt refused to forget. Every time he looked at another woman, all he saw was her, Isabella. She was the one thing his money could never buy back. Her name still lingered like a scar under his breath, a prayer he didn't deserve to say. The office door opened softly. Liam, his closest friend and business partner, walked in without knocking. "Still here?" Liam's tone carried concern under his casual voice. Caleb didn't answer, just stared out the window, watching the rain trace crooked lines down the glass. Liam sighed. "You know, for a man who owns half of Silicon Heights, you sure love to torture yourself with late nights and old ghosts." Caleb's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Ghosts don't leave when they built the house with you," he murmured. Liam studied him for a long moment, then changed the subject. "We need to finalize the annual gala, Caleb. PR wants a new theme this year. The board already hired an event planner. Best in the business, apparently." Caleb's tone was flat. "Whoever it is, just get it done." "You sure?" Liam asked, scrolling on his tablet. "This one came highly recommended. Woman's got her own firm, big clients, crazy attention to detail." Caleb didn't care. Details couldn't fix him, until Liam said the name. "Her name's Isabella Reyes." The air changed. Caleb froze. The glass in his hand slipped, shattering against the counter. For a second, he didn't breathe. Every part of him, the parts that built empires and controlled millions, fell silent. Liam looked up, startled. "You okay?" But Caleb couldn't hear him. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Isabella Reyes. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. Not since the divorce. Not since the night she walked out, eyes red, voice shaking, promising never to look back. And she hadn't. He tried to reach out once, months later, when regret was still new. Her lawyer sent back the papers instead of a reply. That was the end. Until now. Caleb sank into his chair, staring at nothing, trying to steady the tremor in his hands. The city outside felt suddenly smaller, quieter, almost suffocating. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I said her name's Isabella Reyes," Liam repeated slowly, watching him. "Why? You know her?" Know her? He knew the way she breathed when she was asleep. He knew the sound of her laughter, the scent of her skin after rain, the exact pitch of her anger when she caught him lying. He knew her better than he knew himself. And he destroyed her anyway. Liam frowned. "Caleb?" Caleb cleared his throat, forcing composure back into his tone. "Yeah, I know her." Liam raised an eyebrow, sensing more, but choosing not to ask. "Well, she's supposed to come in Monday for the planning meeting. You'll meet her then." Monday. 2 days from now. Caleb nodded absently, but his mind was already far away. In the past, in every mistake he'd made. He turned back to the window. The rain hadn't stopped, and for the first time in years, he wished it would, because he could feel something he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Fear. He'd faced boardrooms full of sharks, investors who could crush him, crises that could bankrupt entire divisions. But the thought of facing her again, the woman who once saw his soul and then turned her back on it, that terrified him. He imagined her walking into his office, confident and composed, those same brown eyes that once softened at his touch, now hard as stone. He wondered if she'd still smell like jasmine and sea salt. He wondered if she'd even look at him. The clock ticked louder. The rain fell harder. The city lights blurred into 1,000 fragments of gold and sorrow. Caleb ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of 7 years pressing down like stone. He had all the power in the world, yet no power over the one thing that mattered. He whispered her name under his breath again, Isabella. The sound alone felt dangerous. Sacred. For a moment he thought about canceling the meeting. He could send someone else, pretend he didn't care. But something inside him, something stubborn and broken, whispered that maybe he needed to see her. Not to win her back, not yet, just to face the truth of what he'd lost. Liam checked his watch. "Get some sleep, man. You look like hell." Caleb forced a chuckle. "That's the first honest feedback I've had all week." When Liam left, the office returned to silence. Only the whisper of rain and the hum of electricity kept him company. Caleb sat there long after midnight, staring at the city that had given him everything except peace. He thought about how strange it was that even success could become a prison. He'd built walls of glass around himself, transparent enough to see the world, but too thick to touch it. And now, after all these years, a single name had cracked those walls. Isabella Reyes. He whispered it again, and something inside him stirred. Pain, regret, maybe hope, though he didn't dare call it that. He looked down at the scattered shards of glass on the counter, fragments glinting like broken memories. It felt fitting. He poured another drink, though it was already too late for sleep. His reflection in the window stared back, older, lonelier, smaller somehow. And for the first time in years, he wondered what she'd see if she looked at him now. Would she recognize the man she once loved, or just the stranger who broke her heart? The night deepened, and the city below pulsed with light. Living, breathing, moving on. But Caleb couldn't move. Because somewhere out there, the woman he lost was preparing for a job she didn't know would change both their lives again. He exhaled slowly, eyes heavy with the kind of pain that never really leaves. And as the digital clock on his desk blinked toward dawn, he reached for the folder Liam had left behind, a stack of proposals, contracts, and schedules for the upcoming gala. Nothing unusual, until his eyes fell on the first page. There, in bold black letters across the top of the contract, he saw it. Event planner, Isabella Reyes. And for the first time in 7 years, Caleb Vance forgot how to breathe. The morning came dressed in silver clouds and sharp nerves. Caleb hadn't slept. The city had crawled from night into dawn, but he was still at his desk, staring at that single line of text on the contract like it was written in fire. Isabella Reyes. Even seeing her name in print had weight. Now that name was becoming a reality. He changed his shirt 3 times before giving up. Every tie felt too formal, every word he rehearsed too small. No amount of wealth or power could prepare him for this kind of meeting, the one that required a heart instead of a business plan. By the time the clock struck 10, his office building buzzed with preparations for the upcoming gala. Assistants hurried past his glass walls, carrying folders, laptops, cups of coffee. But all Caleb could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat. He stood by the window again, the skyline of New York gleaming beneath a soft drizzle. It reminded him of the day she left. Gray skies, soft rain, quiet heartbreak. He inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly. He was not the man she left. He had changed, or at least he hoped he had. Liam entered with his usual calm presence. "She's here," he said simply. 2 words. That was all it took. Caleb's pulse spiked. "Now?" "Now," Liam confirmed. "She's setting up in the boardroom." Caleb's throat tightened. His mind screamed to delay, but his legs had other plans. The hallway felt longer than usual. Every step echoed. Every reflection in the glass walls felt like a ghost, watching him walk toward his reckoning. He reached the boardroom door, paused, drew a long breath, then opened it. She was there, Isabella Reyes, in a fitted cream suit that glowed softly under the morning light, her posture straight, her chin slightly lifted. Her hair was pulled back neatly, revealing the curve of her neck and those familiar brown eyes that once looked at him like he was her world. Now they were unreadable, cold professionalism wrapped around her like armor. Caleb froze. For a moment, sound disappeared. The noise of people talking, the shuffle of papers, all of it faded behind the roaring silence inside him. She didn't flinch when she saw him. No tremor, no gasp, no visible sign of the storm he hoped still existed beneath that calm. "Mr. Vance," she greeted, her voice composed, clipped, businesslike. He felt that formal tone like a knife. "Mr. Vance." Not Caleb. Not the name she used to whisper when the world was quiet. "Mrs. Reyes," he managed to reply, his voice rougher than he intended. She gave a brief nod and continued flipping through her presentation binder, not once meeting his eyes for long. Caleb tried to focus on the words, the details, budget, themes, color palettes, but his mind refused. All he saw was her, the woman who once painted his mornings with laughter and ended his nights with peace. Now she spoke to him as if he were just another client on her list. Every second stretched, every polite word hurt. When she handed him a printed outline, their fingers brushed. A spark, small, immediate, unspoken. She withdrew her hand quickly as though it burned. Caleb's heart twisted. She wasn't cold because she didn't care. She was cold because she still did. And she was protecting herself from him. Liam cleared his throat, trying to ease the tension that hung thick as smoke. "Well, Isabella," he said gently, "we're excited to see what you bring to this year's gala. Your reputation precedes you." She smiled faintly, professional but not warm. "Thank you. I'm glad my work speaks louder than my past." The line hit harder than a gunshot. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. She had every right to that edge in her tone. He'd earned it. The meeting stretched on for nearly an hour. She presented slides, spoke about design concepts, floral arrangements, lighting schemes. Her voice was steady, melodic, confident. He could tell she had built herself from the ground up again, stronger, sharper, untouchable. And that realization both broke him and filled him with pride. When the final slide clicked off, silence lingered. "Excellent presentation," Liam said. "I think we're all in agreement here." Caleb nodded mechanically. "Yes, impressive." Bella gave a small smile, her eyes flicking to him briefly, unreadable again. "I'll coordinate with your assistant for further details," she said, gathering her papers. Just as she turned toward the door, it opened unexpectedly. A soft laugh. Tiny footsteps. A young woman, clearly a nanny, stepped in, holding the hands of two small children. Caleb blinked, confused. The twins couldn't have been more than 3 years old. A boy and a girl, mirror images of innocence. Dark hair, warm brown eyes, the kind that caught light like honey. They giggled, tugging free from the nanny's hands, running toward Bella. Caleb's world tilted. Bella froze mid-step, her face drained of color. "Matteo, Sophia, wait," she whispered, but it was too late. They reached her, wrapping their tiny arms around her legs. The little boy pressed his cheek against her thigh, grinning up at her. The girl clutched a small stuffed bear. Caleb couldn't move. His eyes locked on the children, his mind struggling to piece together what his heart already knew. There was something painfully familiar in those faces. The curve of the boy's chin. The shape of the girl's nose. They were echoes of him. Time slowed. The air thickened. Bella's hand trembled as she smoothed the little girl's hair, her gaze darting briefly to Caleb before falling away. No one in the room spoke. Even Liam's easy confidence faltered. Caleb's pulse thundered. He took a step forward, almost involuntarily. The children looked up at him with wide curiosity. No fear, just innocence. He tried to smile, but his lips barely moved. His throat was dry. The nanny, oblivious to the tension, apologized softly. "I'm so sorry, Miss Reyes. They slipped past me in the lobby. They were so excited to see you." Bella forced a nod, her voice tight. "It's okay. They're just children. Children." The word hit differently. It wasn't just the presence of kids in a corporate meeting. It was them. Caleb stared at the boy again. Those eyes, that expression, the way his small brow furrowed when he studied something unfamiliar. It was like looking into a mirror from a lifetime ago. And then, the little girl lifted her stuffed bear, showing it proudly to her mother. Caleb's breath caught. He recognized that toy. It was old, worn, one ear slightly torn. He remembered buying it years ago on a random Tuesday, just because Bella had once mentioned loving bears as a child. He remembered how she laughed when he surprised her with it. Now it was in the hands of a child. His mind raced, denial fighting instinct. But deep down, something ancient and undeniable whispered the truth. He didn't need DNA tests or explanations. He knew. Bella's hands shook slightly as she tried to usher the twins out of the room. I'm sorry," she murmured. "This won't happen again." But Caleb couldn't hear her. His body was locked in place, heart pounding so loud it drowned the world. The boy turned once more, smiling at his mother, then at Caleb, eyes shining with a strange familiarity. And then it happened. The little boy clutched the stuffed bear tighter, looked up at Bella with pure joy, and said, "Mama." Caleb's breath shattered. The world stopped moving. The sound of that single word, "Mama," echoed through the boardroom and reverberated inside Caleb's chest like a hammer striking iron. Every rational thought he tried to cling to collapsed under the weight of recognition. Those weren't just children. They were his. His heart skipped, stumbled, and finally broke, all in the same instant. He didn't think. He couldn't think. He moved as though guided by gravity alone, crossing the polished floor in long, heavy strides, feeling the air thicken around him. The little boy clutched his bear and looked at Caleb with the certainty only children possess. Caleb stopped short. The world blurred at the edges. He wanted to fall to his knees, to beg forgiveness, to hold them, but all he could do was stand there, frozen, eyes wide, voice trapped somewhere between memory and disbelief. Bella's hands tightened on the twins. Her face was pale, her jaw rigid. She didn't look at him, though he knew she felt his presence like a storm in the room. Caleb. Her voice was careful, low, steady, but the syllable carried a weight that made him shiver. He swallowed. Something raw, unformed, clawed at his throat. Bella. He stopped. Words dissolved before they could form, inadequate for the magnitude of what had just hit him. The twins laughed softly, unaware of the tension that twisted the air around them. Their innocence was a mirror, reflecting everything Caleb had lost, every moment he had missed. Mateo's tiny hand gripped the bear tighter. Sophia clung to her mother, and for a fleeting second, Caleb understood how profoundly he had failed. He turned abruptly, fleeing the room before anyone could stop him, before the dam of his emotions broke entirely. The hallway was a blur of glass and light. Each step felt heavy, weighted with a guilt that no success could counter. He didn't look back. The sound of his own footsteps pounded in his ears, drowning out the quiet whispers of assistants and staff. Outside, the rain had started in earnest, soaking the city streets and turning the pavement into mirrors. Caleb stumbled out of the building, his coat useless against the downpour, his hair plastered to his forehead. The rain was cold, shocking, almost cleansing, but it didn't touch the fire in his chest. Bella followed, keeping her distance, maintaining the professional composure she had cultivated over years of solitude. She didn't run to him, didn't call his name, didn't offer comfort. She had learned long ago that some truths needed space, distance, and time before they could be faced. Caleb's chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. His vision blurred, not from the rain, but from the sudden surge of all the years he had missed. He could barely speak, yet he had to. He needed answers. His voice cracked, breaking the wall of composure he usually hid behind. What are their names? He demanded, not knowing if he could bear the answer even as he sought it. Bella's hands rested lightly on her coat, fingers tightening imperceptibly. She lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze for the briefest of moments. Her brown eyes were hard, but not without pain. "You didn't earn the right to be their father," she said softly, coldly, with the finality of someone who had endured years of disappointment and solitude. Caleb staggered back as if struck. His knees nearly buckled. The words reverberated inside him like jagged glass. How could you?" His throat tightened. His voice trembled. I didn't know. You didn't care enough to stay," she interrupted, sharper now. "You left. You abandoned me. You abandoned them. I was left to carry everything alone, and I swore I wouldn't let you hurt them again. That's why I never told you." He closed his eyes, the rain running down his face, mingling with the tears he couldn't stop. Every regret he had ever carried compressed into this single, excruciating moment. His hands shook, his body ached, his soul screamed. "You have children," he whispered, voice breaking. "Children I didn't know. I missed." He could not finish the sentence. He had missed everything, their first steps, their first words, their laughter, their pain. He had been absent from their lives, and nothing he could do would ever erase that. Bella's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. She turned her gaze toward the twins, who were playing just out of sight, oblivious to the storm around them. "They are your children," she said quietly. Her voice cracked just a little. Their names are Matteo and Sophia. Caleb's knees weakened. The words cut through him, sharp, jagged, permanent. He swallowed hard, choking on the mixture of grief and longing that threatened to consume him entirely. His hands dug into his coat, nails pressing into fabric as if holding on could somehow tether him to this new, impossible reality. Rain soaked his suit, plastered his hair to his skull, but he barely felt it. The world had narrowed down to those names. Matteo, Sophia. They existed. They were alive. They were real. And he had been nowhere. Bella watched him closely, the edge of fear and anger still present, but tempered by the undeniable truth. He had seen them now, seen the consequences of his choices laid bare. She didn't know if she could forgive him, but she also knew that hiding the truth would no longer serve anyone. Caleb's hands trembled as he whispered, barely audible above the rain. I have to. I have to see them. I have to be there. I have to. The words repeated like a mantra, desperate, raw, unpolished. Everything he had built, every empire, every fortune, every achievement, suddenly felt hollow. None of it mattered in the face of what he had lost, what he had ignored for years. He took a tentative step forward, then another. His shoes sank slightly into the wet pavement. He wanted to fall to his knees, to beg, to cry, to somehow take back all the time stolen from them. But he also knew he had nothing to offer except himself. Broken, remorseful, willing to try. Bella stayed a few steps behind him, watching, silent. She had spent 5 years guarding her heart and raising their children alone. She was exhausted, wary, and still so painfully protective. But she also saw the raw, unfiltered grief in his eyes. Caleb clenched his fists against the cold, biting rain. The magnitude of what he had missed, the reality of their lives without him, was crushing. Every step forward was a battle against despair, every thought of the past a dagger twisting in his chest. Yet, amid the rain, amid the regret, a tiny ember flickered, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Maybe he could still become the father they deserved. Maybe he could still earn back the trust of the woman who had never stopped being his anchor. His voice trembled as he finally lifted it above the sound of the rain. I know I don't deserve this. I know I don't deserve them. But I'll do whatever it takes. I'll earn it. Every day, every moment, every breath. Bella's eyes remained fixed on him. The twins played a few feet away, unaware of the storm between their parents, yet the air had shifted, heavy with possibility. Caleb took a step toward them, then another, the rain soaking through him completely, but his resolve only growing stronger. For the first time in 7 years, he felt a purpose that no money, no empire, no achievement had ever given him, and in that purpose, he whispered again, louder, fiercer, with trembling lips and burning heart. Then I'll earn it now, even if it takes the rest of my life. The morning sun rose with a muted glow, brushing golden streaks across the city streets. Caleb's eyes were heavy, his suit still damp from the previous night's rain, but he moved with a determination that surprised even himself. He wasn't thinking about the boardroom, or shareholders, or deadlines. Not today. Today, his entire world had shrunk to a single purpose, seeing them again. He found himself at the event venue first, arriving hours before anyone else. The staff barely recognized him, accustomed as they were to his usual aloof presence. But now, he crouched behind tables, adjusting wires and microphones, lifting chairs, making sure every detail was perfect. Not because anyone demanded it, not because of business, but because he wanted to be present, even in the smallest, invisible ways. Bella had arrived early, too, moving with her usual precision. She carried her clipboard like a shield, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floors, her expression carefully neutral. She didn't look up until she noticed him near the soundboard, untangling cables with the same intensity she remembered in him. Focused, deliberate, controlled. Their eyes met briefly. She looked away immediately, but something in her chest stirred, a reluctant, uneasy admiration. He hadn't barged in. He hadn't demanded anything. He was just there. And he seemed willing to do whatever it took to be part of this world, even if she didn't allow it. The twins arrived mid-morning, rushing in hand with the nanny. Caleb froze the moment he saw them, holding back the urge to call their names. Instead, he watched quietly from a corner, careful not to alarm them. Mateo noticed him first, peeking over the edge of a table. His small face squinted in curiosity. Sophia followed, her tiny fingers clinging to her mother's hand. Caleb lowered himself to their level, careful not to make sudden movements, speaking softly in a voice meant to be gentle, safe. "Hey there," he said, almost in a whisper. I'm just helping today. Want to see how the lights work?" The twins giggled, eyes sparkling, unaware of the bond that tied them to this man. They leaned in, fascinated by the little flickers of light and shadow he made dance across the floor. Their laughter was the kind of sound that could shatter walls and melt the hardest armor. Caleb felt it reach places inside him he didn't know were still alive. Bella watched from across the room, arms folded, heart caught between fear and awe. He was careful. He didn't try to touch them, didn't try to claim them. He simply existed in their world, present but unobtrusive, and that was more than she had expected. Later, he showed up at her office, arriving with coffee and breakfast in hand. She gave him a look sharp enough to cut glass. "You can't just appear," she said, voice firm but not cruel. "I know," he replied, calm, sincere. "I'm not asking permission, I just want to be nearby. If that's allowed." She wanted to tell him no, to force him to leave. She wanted to protect herself, to protect them. But when she caught sight of him offering a small paper airplane to Sophia, coaxing her to throw it gently across the office floor, she felt something crack inside her, something long held in place by anger and hurt. He began appearing at the daycare next. Quietly, unobtrusively, he offered to fix broken toys, paint chipped walls, and even organized a small reading corner. The staff were suspicious, curious, and impressed all at once. Caleb's reputation preceded him, but his humility and care in this new role left them unsettled. Every time he crouched near the twins, showing them how to build towers with blocks or how to fold paper into little boats, he felt a strange mixture of terror and wonder. He had never imagined fatherhood could be this subtle and this powerful. It wasn't about grand gestures, it was about presence, about being consistent, about earning trust moment by moment. Bella began to notice small changes in the twins. Mateo started to glance toward Caleb without hesitation. Sophia would giggle when he made silly faces. They didn't know him. They didn't know they were his. But they responded to his sincerity, his patience, his willingness to just exist in their world without claiming it. One afternoon, Liam cornered him in the hallway of the event venue. "You're going too fast," he warned, voice low. "You can't just insert yourself into their lives all at once. You'll scare them, or worse. You'll scare her." Caleb shook his head, rain from a passing drizzle dripping off his hair. "I don't care about slow or fast. I don't care about being polite. I need them to know I'm here, that I'll be here, that I'm trying. Liam, I need to fix this. Not just for me. For them." Liam sighed, running a hand over his face. "I get it, Caleb. I do. But don't forget, she's been protecting them. And protecting herself. You have to earn your way in, not just show up." "I'm done earning money," Caleb said quietly. "I've done that my entire life. Now I need to earn something else, something that matters." The days blended together. Caleb was at the venue, at the office, at the daycare, appearing with small acts of kindness and patient attention. He learned their routines, their favorite toys, their little quirks. Mateo liked to line up cars in perfect order before bedtime stories. Sophia preferred stacking cups in descending colors. He watched them from afar, waited for moments when they would look at him with curiosity, not fear. And slowly, ever so slowly, they began to respond to his presence with innocent affection. Bella's heart was a battlefield. She hated how easily he had inserted himself into their lives without force, without demand. And yet, she couldn't deny the subtle shift in her children, the way Mateo's face lit up when he saw Caleb crouch to pick up a block, or the soft giggle that escaped Sophia when he made a funny face. She tried to stay distant, professional, cautious, but even she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the man who had broken her heart could become the father they deserved. One evening, after the venue had emptied and the lights dimmed, Caleb lingered. Mateo and Sophia were playing quietly in a corner, building a fortress of blocks. Caleb knelt beside Mateo, pointing at a small car, whispering instructions in a voice that trembled, not from fear, but from hope and raw emotion. Bella walked quietly toward the door, intending to retrieve some paperwork, but froze. Her eyes widened as she watched him, kneeling there in the soft glow of the overhead lights, whispering so softly it was barely audible. "I'm your dad." She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just watched, heart pounding, unsure of whether to step forward or retreat. Time seemed suspended. The twins didn't look up immediately, absorbed in their play, yet the words lingered in the room, heavy, intimate, undeniable. Caleb's lips trembled. His eyes glistened. He reached slowly toward Mateo, who looked up with curious eyes, unafraid, unknowing, innocent. Caleb's hand hovered above the boy's shoulder, trembling with the enormity of what he was attempting. Not to claim, not to impose, but to offer love, finally, finally, unconditional and present. Bella's chest tightened, a mix of fear, hope, and reluctant awe flooding her. She had never imagined she would see him like this. Not this vulnerable, not this determined, not this painfully human. Caleb exhaled slowly, whispering again, a vow carried in the quiet of the nearly empty venue. "I'm your dad." Bella remained frozen in the doorway, heart caught between disbelief and cautious hope, watching him kneel beside Mateo, whispering the words that could change everything, and wondering if she was ready to let him in. The room was heavy with silence, the kind that presses down on your chest until every breath feels forced. Caleb had knelt beside Mateo only moments before, whispering the words he had longed to say for years, and now the air between him and Bella felt charged with unspoken accusations, heartbreak, and years of unresolved tension. Bella finally stepped forward, her eyes sharp, her jaw tight. "You think showing up, kneeling there, and whispering 'I'm your dad' makes everything okay?" Her voice quivered despite her attempt at control. "Do you have any idea what you've done to us? What you've taken from us?" Caleb rose slowly, rain-soaked hair clinging to his forehead, eyes glistening with emotion. "I know," he admitted quietly, his voice trembling with a mixture of shame and desperation. "I know what I've lost. I know what I've missed. I'm here now, Bella. I'm trying to make it right." "Trying," she spat the word like fire. "Trying isn't enough, Caleb. Not after 5 years of absence. Not after leaving me alone, raising them by myself, shielding them from a father who didn't even exist in their lives." He stepped closer, though cautiously, aware of the invisible walls she had built around herself. "Bella, I've thought about nothing else for 7 years. Every sleepless night, every waking second, I've regretted it. Every choice that led me here, I've paid for. You've paid for nothing. she interrupted, tears threatening to spill. You've hidden behind your money, your empire, your apologies, and we've lived the consequences. We've been the ones who suffered while you lived like it was nothing. The anger in her voice stung, a sharp reminder of every misstep he had made. Caleb's shoulders sagged under the weight of her words. He wanted to reach for her hand, to plead silently with her to understand, but he feared rejection, feared the pain in her gaze. I know, he whispered, almost to himself, his lips trembling. I know it's nothing compared to what you've endured, and what they've endured. But I have to try. I have to, even if it's not enough. Even if you hate me, even if they don't forgive me, I have to try. Bella's breath hitched, her eyes softened just for a heartbeat before the familiar steel returned. She looked at him as though he were a stranger wearing a familiar face. You don't get to just show up and claim your place, Caleb. You don't get to manipulate them, to make them love you overnight, or to force me to let you in. I'm not manipulating anyone, Caleb said, voice raw, pleading. I don't want to force them or you. I need them to know I'm here, that I care, that I'm trying to be their father, their protector. I can't undo the past, Bella, but I can fight for the present and the future. Her hands trembled slightly, and for a fleeting moment, the armor she had worn for years cracked. She saw the anguish in his eyes, the sleepless nights etched into his face, the man who had been imprisoned not by fortune, but by guilt and regret. You know what's worse than losing you? She asked, her voice softening despite herself. Watching you live with your life while we suffered in silence, watching you smile for the world while our smiles disappeared. Caleb's throat tightened. He could feel tears forming, and he didn't care if she saw them. I couldn't touch anyone after you, Bella. Every attempt, every connection, failed. My body refused because my heart mourned you. It was like a curse, a punishment I didn't deserve to survive, yet survived anyway. I've been broken in ways you'll never know. Her lips parted slightly. She wanted to speak, to comfort, to close the gap, but the scars ran deep. She flinched when he reached for her hand, when his fingers brushed against hers lightly, as if mere contact could either heal or reopen every wound. It's too much, she whispered, stepping back. You can show up, you can try, you can beg for forgiveness, but it doesn't erase the past. Not yet. Not ever. You've left too many walls between us. Caleb's hands fell to his sides. He felt hollow yet alive at the same time. Every word she spoke was a dagger, but each one carved a path to understanding, to truth. He wanted to yell, to scream, to demand she see him. Not as the man who betrayed her, but as the man desperate to redeem himself. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said quietly. I don't expect them to call me Dad yet. I only ask that I be allowed to try, that I be allowed to be present every day, for them, for you, for us. Bella's eyes softened again, glancing at the twins who were quietly playing nearby, unaware of the storm between their parents. Matteo had started stacking blocks with careful precision, while Sophia meticulously lined up crayons. The innocence of their world was almost unbearable, and Caleb's presence nearby, patient, tentative, gentle, didn't go unnoticed. You've hurt them, she said, voice low, almost a whisper, trembling with the weight of the past. And you've hurt me. And you can't undo that with a few afternoons of attention, Caleb. You can't. I know, he admitted, voice raw, trembling with honesty. I know I don't deserve it. I know I'm late. I know I've failed. But I'm here. I'm not leaving. I will show up every day in every way I can. I will earn it, even if it takes the rest of my life. For a moment, the air between them was suspended, heavy with unshed tears and words that could never fully capture the weight of regret, longing, and tentative hope. Bella's gaze softened once more, lingering on his eyes, searching for the truth buried beneath the sorrow. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust the man kneeling before her, stripped of arrogance, wealth, and pretense, leaving only a father willing to fight for his children. The twins, oblivious to the tension, played in the corner, giggling softly, unaware that their father was kneeling nearby, vulnerable and human, desperately trying to find a way into their lives and into hers. The night stretched long. Rain traced down the windows outside, soft and relentless, mirroring the turmoil within. Caleb stayed near them, silent, steady, his hands hovering over toys and blocks, his heart brimming with guilt, love, and hope. He couldn't force forgiveness. He couldn't erase the past. But he could show up, every single day, for them, for her, for the life that had been stolen by his mistakes. And in that room, amid blocks and crayons, tears and silence, he whispered to himself as much as to the world, he would not give up. He would not walk away. Not now, not ever. The night ended in quiet tension, a fragile truce between past wounds and tentative possibility. The next morning, Caleb's phone rang. Liam's voice was tense. "Caleb, Chloe's back in town." Caleb stared at his phone, the screen glaring against the dim morning light filtering through his office window. Liam's words echoed in his mind. Chloe's back in town. A chill ran down his spine. He had spent years trying to bury that chapter, to erase the shadow that had haunted him. Yet the past had a way of creeping back when least expected. He gripped the phone tightly, knuckles white. Chloe, the woman whose name had once shattered his world, whose fleeting presence had turned a lifetime of love into rubble. He closed his eyes, imagining her smile, the calculated charm that had lured him, the laughter that had felt like danger wrapped in silk. Liam's voice came through again, firmer now. "She's been spotted downtown. Rumor is she wants to meet. Caleb, you need to be careful. This isn't just a random visit. She has a way of stirring chaos." Caleb exhaled slowly, the sound heavy with unease. For a moment he allowed himself to remember the nights after the affair, the silent regret that had become a cage, the nights of staring at the ceiling, haunted by her face, haunted by the knowledge that he had destroyed the one life that truly mattered. He placed the phone down, running a hand through his damp hair. He had promised himself he would never let her influence his life again. Not now, not with Bella and the twins, not when he had finally found a purpose that mattered. Yet even as he tried to steel himself, doubt crept in like a shadow. What if Chloe's reappearance wasn't innocent? What if she came to disrupt the fragile bridge he was building with Bella and their children? What if the walls they had all slowly constructed were threatened to crumble once more? Caleb knew he had to act. Not impulsively, not recklessly, but decisively. He needed to protect the family he was only beginning to claim, to shield them from the storm Chloe could bring. He drove through the city streets, each red light feeling like a countdown. His mind raced, replaying every possible scenario. Chloe at the gala, Chloe at Bella's office, Chloe showing up unannounced at the daycare. He had to prepare. He had to be ready. Meanwhile, Bella's day was unfolding with its own rhythm of chaos. Meetings, emails, phone calls, all under the constant watch of Matteo and Sophia, who demanded attention in the sweetest, most exhausting ways. She noticed the subtle change in the twins, the way they glanced toward the entrance whenever Caleb was nearby, their innocent smiles lighting up when he entered a room. And yet, she couldn't ignore the creeping worry that Caleb's sudden intensity might be fragile. He had arrived in their lives with quiet humility, with patient gestures, but the past had a way of clawing back, and she feared the damage Chloe could inflict. Back in his office, Caleb pulled out the old phone number he had deleted years ago. He stared at it for a long moment, heart hammering. Chloe had a history of unpredictability, of turning hearts to ashes and leaving scars that refused to heal. He couldn't let her invade the delicate world he was trying to rebuild. He paced the room, mind working in overdrive. Each step was a battle between fear and determination, between memory and the present. His children deserved a father who could stand firm, who could protect, who could resist the allure of the past. He remembered the last time he had seen Chloe. Her eyes had been bright with mischief, her smile teasing, full of promises she had no intention of keeping. That memory twisted in his chest like a knife. He couldn't allow her to steal that from him again, not when he had a chance to make things right. Caleb's gaze drifted to a photo on his desk. It was of Matteo and Sophia taken secretly at the daycare, their laughter frozen in a snapshot, their tiny hands reaching for the world. He had vowed to protect this image, to protect them in reality, not just in photographs. Liam's warning echoed again in his mind. She has a way of stirring chaos. Caleb knew he had to confront this threat, not with anger, not with desperation, but with control. He couldn't allow Chloe to fracture the fragile trust he was building with Bella. He couldn't allow her to manipulate his children into confusion or fear. He grabbed his coat and headed out, the city moving past him in a blur. Each turn of the wheel was a beat closer to confrontation, closer to facing the woman who had once stolen his life and nearly his soul. Bella's intuition had been right. The day progressed with the usual demands of life and work, but she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was coming, something that would test the bonds Caleb had started to forge with their children and the walls she had built around her own heart. Meanwhile, Caleb arrived at the location Liam had mentioned, a quiet cafe downtown, nondescript from the outside, but he knew Chloe well enough to anticipate her choice of venues, somewhere public, somewhere where she could watch, observe, manipulate. He paused outside, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility that now rested on him. His past, his guilt, his failures, all of it converged in this moment. He couldn't falter. He couldn't show weakness. Inside, the cafe was calm. People sipped coffee, chatted quietly. Caleb's eyes scanned the room. And then he saw her. Chloe, effortlessly beautiful, dressed in a way that demanded attention, yet she seemed to glide through the space as if she owned none of it. Her gaze landed on him immediately. That smile appeared, soft, knowing, dangerous, a smile that had haunted his dreams for years. Caleb's chest tightened. He stepped forward cautiously. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a test, a trap, a challenge, and he had no choice but to meet it head on. Chloe's lips curved into that familiar, confident smirk. "Caleb," she purred, her voice smooth and deliberate. "It's been a long time." His jaw tightened. The memories, the guilt, the broken promises, they all surged up at once. But Caleb forced himself to remain composed, standing tall despite the storm inside. "Yes," he said evenly, "it has. And I don't intend to repeat the mistakes of the past." Her eyes glinted, sharp with curiosity and mischief. "Oh, I don't doubt that you've changed," she said, her tone teasing. "But have you really, or are you just pretending?" Caleb's fists clenched at his sides. Every instinct screamed to walk away, to avoid this trap. But he knew he couldn't. Not now. Not with the life he was trying to protect, with the family he was finally claiming. He squared his shoulders, voice low but firm. "I've changed, and I won't allow you to harm what I've fought so hard to build." Chloe's smirk didn't falter. She leaned back, studying him with that calculated curiosity that always unnerved him. "We'll see about that," she whispered, almost to herself, before standing abruptly. Caleb's pulse quickened. He realized the confrontation was only beginning. And whatever she had planned, it wouldn't be simple. The cafe seemed smaller, the air thicker. Every instinct told him to prepare for the storm he knew was coming, the one that would threaten everything he had just begun to reclaim. As Chloe turned to leave, Caleb's phone buzzed with a message from Liam. She's asking about Bella and the twins. Caleb, she knows. The rain came down in sheets, relentless and cold, washing over the marble steps of Caleb Vance's mansion like a punishment from the heavens. Inside, silence had become a permanent resident. The grand piano hadn't been played in months. The fireplace, once his refuge on sleepless nights, sat dark and unused. He moved through the house like a ghost, each room echoing with the laughter that never returned. His success mocked him from every wall, magazine covers, awards, photographs of a man who no longer existed. He couldn't remember the last time he smiled without pretending. Sleep came in fragments, restless and cruel. The nightmares weren't of what he did, they were of what he lost. Bella's voice in his dreams wasn't angry anymore. It was distant, unreachable, fading like smoke in the wind. The twins' faces haunted him most, two small reflections of the love he destroyed. Caleb's health began to crumble again. He skipped meals, forgot meetings, let his company run without him. His phone buzzed with unanswered calls until Liam showed up unannounced, slamming his hand on the desk. "You're disappearing, Caleb. I've watched you fight for deals that meant nothing compared to this. So fight for her. Fight for them. Or you'll drown in what's left." Caleb looked up, eyes rimmed red. "I already lost them, Liam." "Then lose everything else," Liam shot back, his tone raw. "If it costs your pride, your empire, fine. But don't lose the chance to make it right." That night, Caleb stared at his reflection in the rain-streaked glass wall of his office. The man staring back was hollow-eyed, defeated, but beneath the exhaustion flickered something he hadn't felt in years: resolve. He deleted his social media accounts one by one. Public appearances were cancelled. His face vanished from the internet. The world could keep its admiration. He didn't want it anymore. He wanted forgiveness. Days turned into weeks. He followed the trail quietly, through whispers and old contacts. Bella had disappeared from the city, taken the twins, and left the spotlight behind. Every lead brought him closer until finally he stood at the edge of a quiet neighborhood where laughter sounded genuine again. Children playing, neighbors talking, rain falling softly on old wooden porches. Her childhood home stood there, simple, warm, and alive in a way his mansion never was. Light glowed through the curtains, flickering against the storm. His heart pounded as he walked through the puddles, soaked to the bone, carrying nothing but a memory of the woman who once called him her home. He hesitated at the doorstep. What could he possibly say that hadn't been said before? The wind tore through his thoughts, and still he knocked. The door creaked open, and there she was, Bella. Dressed in a faded sweater, her hair tied back, the faint traces of fatigue beneath her eyes could not dull her quiet strength. Her gaze met his, unreadable. No warmth, no hatred, just the calm of a woman who had already survived the worst. "Why are you here, Caleb?" she asked softly, her tone steady, but her hands trembled slightly at her sides. The sound of her voice undid him. The practiced poise, the rehearsed apologies, all of it fell apart. He took a breath, but it caught in his throat. His legs gave way, and before he could stop himself, he sank to his knees on the wet porch, rainwater splashing around him. His hands shook as he looked up at her. No empire, no armor, just a man stripped bare. "Because I finally realized," his voice cracked, breaking between sobs and rain, "I can't heal without you." Bella stood frozen at the doorway as thunder rolled across the sky. Behind her, the twins' laughter echoed faintly from inside. For the first time in years, she didn't close the door. The storm outside mirrored the one inside Caleb's chest. Rain pelted the roof and windows, splashing into puddles around the porch, as if the world itself were weeping with him. He remained on his knees, soaked through, eyes searching Bella's face, searching for a crack of mercy, a sign that she might still allow him into the world he had once destroyed. Bella, he began, voice breaking, wet hair plastered to his forehead. I've been a coward. I've been blind. She cut him off with a sharp, trembling breath. Do you think words can fix this? Her voice was raw, brittle, jagged from years of holding back. Do you think one apology, one explanation can make up for 5 years of absence, 5 years of missing everything? Caleb swallowed, his throat tight. His hands shook, reaching out instinctively, but he knew he couldn't force the past into submission. I can't undo it, he admitted, voice cracking under the weight of everything. I can't go back. I can't bring back what I've missed, but I can be here. I can try. Every day please, let me try. Let me be their father. Let me be part of your life again. Bella's eyes darkened with the storm inside her, the grief and fury she had carried for years. She turned abruptly, pacing the porch, fists clenched at her sides. You have no idea, Caleb, she spat, voice rising, catching on the wind. You don't know what it's like to live without the person you love, without the family you built together, while the man who promised everything disappears into thin air. Her body shook, sobs racking her shoulders. Years of buried pain erupted in a torrent of emotion. She screamed, threw her hands in the air, rain-soaked strands of hair clinging to her cheeks. Do you know how it feels to see their first steps, to hear their first words and know that the one who should have been there wasn't? You missed them. You missed us. Caleb stayed kneeling, silent, shattered. He didn't try to touch her. He didn't argue, didn't make excuses. He just let her rage crash over him like the storm outside, taking it all in, taking every word like a blade, cutting him open in places he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. I know, he whispered at last, his voice trembling. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I've failed. I've missed their first steps, their first words. I've missed all of it. And I can't ever get that time back, but I can be here from now on. Please, just let me try. The tears came then, unchecked, streaming down his face, soaking into his coat. His body shook with grief, with regret, with the unbearable weight of knowing what he had lost. He collapsed onto his hands and knees, letting himself fall into the raw pain he had carried silently for so long. It was then that little footsteps approached, tentative and quiet. Caleb didn't notice at first, too absorbed in his despair. But a small, sleepy voice broke through the storm. Daddy. He looked up to see Mateo rubbing his eyes, holding his small stuffed bear close. The boy blinked, innocent and unafraid, staring at him with a gentle curiosity that made Caleb's chest tighten. Caleb reached out instinctively, but his hands hovered, unsure, afraid of being too much or too little. Mateo stepped closer and, without hesitation, offered the bear to him. For you, he said simply. Caleb's breath caught. The small gesture, the unguarded trust of a child, tore something open in him, shattered the walls he had built around his broken heart. He bent forward, taking the bear with trembling hands, and buried his face into it, sobbing uncontrollably, letting grief and love mingle into one raw human moment. Bella stood frozen in the doorway, rain dripping down her hair, watching as her son comforted the man who had once broken her. For the first time in years, something shifted within her, something fragile, tentative, hopeful. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they were still there, but a sliver of possibility had entered her heart. The storm outside began to soften, raindrops falling more gently, as though the world itself recognized the shift happening on that rain-soaked porch. Caleb's sobs echoed into the night, but they were no longer only of loss. They were of awakening, of redemption, slowly clawing its way into existence. Bella's chest tightened. She didn't know what the future would hold, or if she could ever fully forgive. But watching her son reach out, watching Caleb break and embrace the chance to be present in their lives, her heart whispered a quiet, dangerous truth. Maybe, just maybe, redemption was real. Caleb looked up through tear-filled eyes at Bella, clutching Mateo's bear, and whispered, "I'll do anything. Anything to prove I can be the father they deserve." Weeks passed, and the storm that had once defined Caleb's nights gave way to a quieter rhythm. The mansion still loomed over him with its empty halls and silent echoes, but the thought of Bella and the twins filled every corner of his mind, slowly displacing the hollow ache that had once consumed him. He wasn't here for grandeur, not for accolades, not even for love in the way the world knew it. He was here to be a father, and every breath he drew carried the weight of that promise. Mornings became a ritual of small triumphs. Caleb learned the cadence of breakfast routines, pouring cereal just right, not spilling milk over the counter, cutting fruit carefully for little hands. Mateo demanded stories at the table, silly voices and exaggerated expressions, while Sophia preferred drawing silently, small fingers smudged with crayon, but glancing occasionally at Caleb to gauge his approval. Every laugh, every shy smile was a victory, an unspoken nod from fate that perhaps redemption was possible. Bella watched silently from the kitchen doorway at first, cautious, observing, arms crossed over her chest. She had seen the man fall apart. She had seen him crumble before his own guilt and grief. Yet here he was, day after day, showing up, consistent, patient, enduring. There were no grand gestures, no desperate promises, just presence, steady and unwavering. At first she kept her distance. Her hands refused to linger near his when he passed by, her words clipped and professional. But Caleb noticed the subtleties, the way her eyes softened when Mateo leaned on him for a story, the fleeting smile when Sophia handed him a crayon with pride in her small voice. He understood then that patience would be his most powerful weapon. Evenings became sacred. Caleb learned the bedtime routines, bathing the twins, reading stories with dramatic flair, singing songs he never thought he could remember. Mateo insisted on building towers with blocks before brushing teeth, and Caleb would kneel, arranging them carefully while whispering encouragement. Sophia was quieter, shyly curling up against his shoulder during stories, her little hand occasionally brushing his arm, as if testing boundaries. Bella sometimes lingered in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, watching quietly. She wasn't certain whether it was gratitude or something older, deeper, stirring within her. Years of pain and betrayal hadn't vanished, and scars were stubborn. Yet she couldn't deny the subtle shift. The man she had once known only as a betrayer was becoming someone who could be trusted again, someone worthy of the children's tentative affection. Caleb never pressured her. He never tried to bridge the distance too quickly. He simply existed, attentive, present, listening when she spoke, learning when to step forward and when to step back. He cleaned up after the twins without complaint, cooked meals with care, offered her small acts of service, each one a brick in the wall he hoped to rebuild between them. One evening, as the sky deepened into a starless night, Caleb knelt by Sophia's bed, smoothing her blanket. "Good night, little artist," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Sophia's eyes blinked sleepily, and then she murmured, "Daddy, stay." Caleb froze for a heartbeat, heart hammering against his ribs. He glanced toward the doorway. Bella was there, standing silently, watching. Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't pull back, didn't retract, didn't say no. Her presence was quiet but commanding. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of caution and vulnerability, met his. Caleb nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He remained seated, brushing the covers over Sophia, and for a moment, time suspended itself. The past wasn't erased, the betrayals hadn't disappeared, but in that simple request, a spark of trust and hope flickered into life. That night, the three of them lingered in the bedroom long after the twins had fallen asleep. Caleb and Bella sat on the floor, backs against the bed, sharing stories of their past, not the betrayal, not the pain, but the love that had once connected them, the laughter and joy they had shared before the storm. They talked quietly, softly, voices low against the backdrop of distant rain, until the hours stretched toward dawn. They spoke of fear, of heartbreak, of what had been lost, and cautiously, of what might yet be regained. Caleb admitted his faults, the emptiness he had carried, the nights of insomnia and torment over the years. Bella shared her own battles, the moments of loneliness and resentment, and the overwhelming weight of raising the twins alone. By the time the first light of morning began to filter through the curtains, their words had become a bridge, each confession, each shared memory forming a path towards something fragile and beautiful. They had no promises yet, no declarations of love reclaimed, only the quiet understanding that perhaps, slowly, trust could be restored. Caleb's hand hovered near hers for a long moment, uncertainty warring with longing. Finally, Bella reached out, her fingers brushing against his. For the first time, she didn't pull away. The simple touch spoke volumes, tentative acceptance, cautious hope. A silent agreement to walk the road forward together, even if slowly. In that quiet dawn, with the twins still asleep, rain lingering outside, and the weight of the past momentarily lifted, a fragile possibility bloomed. Redemption was not instant, but it had begun. As sunlight spilled across the floor, Caleb whispered softly, "Thank you, Bella, for giving me a chance." Her fingers lingered on his, a hesitant but steady squeeze, and for the first time she allowed herself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, love could return. Sunlight spilled through the windows of Bella's home, casting a warm glow over the small living room where Caleb sat, leaning back against the sofa, exhausted but alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. His hand still lingered near Bella's, fingertips brushing hers lightly, as if testing the new boundaries they were forming. The twins were playing quietly on the floor, blocks stacked haphazardly, their laughter filling the room with life. Each giggle was a balm to Caleb's soul, a reminder of the small miracles he had missed for so long, and now had the privilege to witness. For the first time, he didn't feel the crushing weight of guilt. He didn't feel the invisible chains of failure pressing down on his chest. He felt presence, purpose, and something fragile, luminous, that could only be called hope. He glanced at Bella, her hair tied loosely back, face soft in the morning light, eyes cautious yet open. He had watched her build walls to protect herself and the children, but those walls were no longer barriers. They were structures they could rebuild together, carefully, brick by brick. The room was quiet for a moment, only the twins' playful chatter filling the space, and Caleb felt the enormity of the journey they had all endured. 5 years of absence, of regret, of sleepless nights haunted by what could never be reclaimed. Yet here they were. Matteo and Sophia had already begun to accept him in small, tangible ways. A smile offered freely, a hand taken without hesitation, a hug given before bedtime. Those gestures were victories far greater than any business deal, any accolade he had ever achieved. Bella finally spoke, her voice soft but deliberate. "You know, Caleb, it won't be easy. I won't pretend the past didn't hurt. I won't pretend I trust you fully yet. But I see you trying. And the twins, they feel it too. They feel you." Caleb swallowed, emotion choking his throat. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight," he admitted, voice low, heavy with sincerity. I just, I just want to be there, every day, for them. And for you. I'll do whatever it takes. She studied him for a long moment, her gaze piercing, weighing every word, every expression. Then she nodded subtly, a quiet acknowledgement that she was willing to allow him the space to prove himself. Actions, Caleb, she said finally. Prove it with actions, not words. And so he did. Days turned into weeks, and Caleb became a fixture in their lives, not as a shadowy figure returning too late, but as a constant presence. He learned the smallest details, how Sophia liked her hair braided, how Mateo preferred blueberry pancakes over chocolate chip. He was there for homework, for scraped knees, for bedtime stories, for quiet conversations that revealed fears and dreams alike. Each day he showed Bella the man he had become, not the man who had lost himself to temptation, but the man who had found his soul again through love, patience, and responsibility. One afternoon the family took a trip to the park. Caleb held Sophia's hand as she toddled along the path, her laughter ringing like wind chimes. Mateo ran ahead, shouting for him to catch up, arms wide, filled with joy. Bella followed behind, hands tucked into her coat pockets, watching the scene unfold, her heart swelling despite herself. Caleb caught Mateo mid-run, spinning him around before lowering him to the ground. The boy's laughter rang louder than any business victory Caleb had ever known. And when Sophia clung to his arm, Caleb felt a tenderness that went beyond love, beyond desire. It was the pure, unadulterated bond between father and child. They returned home as dusk fell. Caleb helped Bella prepare dinner, their movements coordinated and easy. The twins played in the living room, scattered toys at their feet, exhausted but happy. When Caleb served the food, Bella's eyes met his across the table, a soft smile hinting at the possibility of forgiveness fully realized. Later, after the twins were asleep, they sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool evening air. Caleb reached for Bella's hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. Their fingers intertwined naturally, without fear, without uncertainty. Words were unnecessary, the warmth of touch, the shared understanding of the hardships endured, and the love slowly reclaimed, spoke louder than anything spoken aloud. They watched the stars emerge one by one, the night sky reflecting the quiet peace that had settled over their hearts. Caleb spoke softly, almost in a whisper. I never thought I'd get another chance. Not with you, not with them. But here we are, and I won't squander it. Bella squeezed his hand, leaning her head on his shoulder. I don't know what the future holds, she admitted, voice low. But I do know that you're here now, and that matters more than anything. Caleb closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the scent of rain-soaked earth and Bella's familiar warmth. For the first time in years, he felt whole, not because the past was erased, but because the present was real, tangible, and shared with the people who mattered most. In the weeks that followed, they rebuilt routines, celebrated milestones, and faced small crises together. Caleb changed diapers, comforted scraped knees, celebrated first words he had missed, and learned the delicate art of parenting alongside Bella. Slowly, her defenses melted, not entirely, but enough for her heart to begin healing. And the twins? They flourished under the combined love of both parents, laughter and innocence filling spaces that had been silent for far too long. Chloe's shadow faded as Caleb's devotion never wavered. When she attempted to disrupt the fragile balance, Caleb stood firm, defending the family he had reclaimed, proving to Bella and to himself that the man who once betrayed could now protect, nurture, and love unconditionally. One evening, in the backyard of their modest, chaotic, love-filled home, Caleb found himself lying on the grass as Mateo and Sophia climbed over him, squeals of joy filling the air. Bella watched from the porch, heart full, eyes glistening with quiet gratitude. He met her gaze, and for the first time, no shame, no regret, no distance separated them. Only love, steady and real. Caleb whispered, almost to himself, "I am finally home." Sophia climbed onto Caleb's chest, wrapping her tiny arms around his neck and whispered, "I love you, Daddy." Caleb looked up at Bella, tears glistening in his eyes, and knew that every broken piece of his past had led to this perfect, fragile, unshakable moment. Their family, once shattered, was finally whole, but the echo of their journey lingered, a reminder that love, once broken, could rise stronger than ever.